Okay, so in the previous video, I talked about my opinions on the Seth Rollins and the Heavyweight Championship problem that seems to be placating WWE, especially on Raw. And you could make it so that it's like, all right, Seth Rollins wants this title to be at the top. He wants to defend it. He wants it to mean something so much that he's willing to put his body on the line and take on all comers that it's breaking him down. And if he would just give up the title, maybe it won't hurt him so much. But the babyface is completely against that. He's valiant and he wants to keep going. Something as simple as that is very understandable by everybody, but they don't seem to be doing it. It's just on to the next with the next week. The video that kind of inspired me to think that way is by a guy that I found on YouTube named Omo Mustard. I swear, if I'm butchering your name, my apologies. I just found your channel and I saw that you was doing wrestling, some wrestling content amongst other things, in which I can show you guys right now. Omo Mustard is a bit of a variety channel that covers wrestling, DBZ, and sports, amongst other things. Seems like he's getting a lot of push on his wrestling video content, and I can understand the wrestling community can be like that. But I definitely wanted to put over Omo for his channel and his content. I might be visiting again because it looked like he has some stuff on here that I would like to talk about. But as for right now, I want to react to his Seth Rollins problem video, as that's what inspired my most previous video about Seth Rollins. So here we are. Let's get into it.
Seth Rollins has been one of the best wrestlers in WWE over the last decade, it feels like. From his run with The Shield to his time with The Authority, the Kingslayer, the Messiah, and even now with the Monday Night Rollins gimmick as the World Heavyweight Champion. Seth Rollins has found new ways to re-innovate himself and come back stronger and better. But there seems to be a constant problem following him every single time he is given the reins to become the champion and lead a brand or the company as the face.
He can't stay healthy. That's not what he's going to say.
That Seth Rollins simply is not good enough to be the guy. It seems like every single time he becomes the champion, whether it's the World Heavyweight run that he's on now or the World Championship run that he had the first time after cashing in on Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania, that there's always somebody else that's overshadowing him as a champion or superstar in general, or the over.
Could it be possible? Could it be possible that maybe Seth Rollins is an overachiever? Maybe Seth Rollins is someone that, if you go back to the 80s and 90s, you had a guy like Rick Rude, who you could look at him as a face of a company, but for some reason, he never really transitioned into that. He was best as the top of the middle card. Now, I don't want to say, a guy like a Ziggler or something like that when he was doing really well in the mid card, or the Miz when he was doing really well in the mid card, because those guys were pretty much laughable throughout their whole run. However, if you take it back to the 80s and 90s, where guys really were looked at as important and that IC title was looked at as important, then you can see where I'm taking this whole thing with Seth Rollins being upper mid card guy. I don't know what it is about him. I don't know if is there a way I could say this in which it won't sound crazy? I don't know if it's like his size. There's no way. There's no way. All right, you get what I mean. He has the presence of a guy that's over, but just not the presence of a guy that's at the top. So, for example, if you were to put him in a different era, he wouldn't be sniffing anywhere near the top of the card. But since you have the era that we have today, where everybody can win or everybody's the same size, then you can put Seth Rollins at the top of that. But the reason why we can't take him seriously as the top guy, as I said previously in another video, is that he's miscasted. When you cast him as a babyface, it doesn't work. But if you give a guy like Seth Rollins a strong heel gimmick with a faction behind him and he's a leader of it, I think that that's where he works the best and can be taken the most seriously. But outside of that, he just comes off as another guy with superb wrestling skill.
overall reign is just bad and fans turn on him. Currently, right now, Seth Rollins is the World Heavyweight Champion, and in my opinion, he's having a pretty solid reign. But there's things about it that definitely could be better, and a lot of fans are picking up on it now more than ever. But to understand a lot of these problems with his current World Heavyweight Champion,
Seth Rollins just wrestles. Like he just wrestles and wears weird clothes. That's Seth Rollins.
Championship reign, we have to go back to the beginning when Seth Rollins cashed in that Money in the Bank briefcase.
Rollins with the title. Rollins with the title. Rollins with the heist of the century.
Seth Rollins did not look like he belonged in that match. Just from an aesthetics, when you give somebody the eye test, you got Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and then you have Seth Rollins. So when they say heist of the century, it really looks that way because he doesn't look like he belongs in there with those two. It's just aesthetics.
Rollins
All
cashed in the Money in the Bank on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania. There's very few ways to kick off a WWE Heavyweight Championship reign better than that. Rollins was basically handpicked by Triple H to be his right-hand man and pupil of his eye over the past year. And when he cashed in on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, it was actually a surprise that a lot of us should have saw coming, but because Roman Reigns was the chosen one, a lot of people assumed it just wasn't going to happen, or if it was, he was going to cash in and lose. But thankfully, he was able to cash in, and he went on an 8-month reign with the championship. Rollins had some pretty good matches in that reign. Despite being booked as the chicken shit heel, it worked with the Authority. Matches with Randy Orton, Dean Ambrose, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, I thought were the highlights of his reign. Now, of course, you do have some of the lowlights, like the match with Kane, and to be honest, that whole feud was a disaster. But despite his booking as a character kind of being up and down, especially being booked as a coward world champion, Rollins was still able to go out there night after night and deliver high quality matches with just about anyone on the roster.
If you do a thing where you listen to a Seth Rollins video or you listen to people speak about Seth Rollins, they all speak about his matches, top of the line matches. But what else? It's kind of like the Will Ospreay issue where, okay, the guy can put on great matches, but what else? You know, like, how can we make this guy mainstream? Look at a Seth Rollins. How can Seth Rollins has been in the WWE main roster as long as Roman Reigns and spent more, he has more days logged in than Roman Reigns. That goes without saying. However, I would say that Roman Reigns is a lot more mainstream than Seth Rollins. Why is that? See, this is what the Seth Rollins problem really is. It isn't about his matches. It isn't about where he is on the card. It's about what else. This stuff matters when you talk about getting the guy to the tippity top, where you can put him on the mountain, when you could put him as one of the four faces, the Mount Rushmore. That is what seems to be missing. When you think of your Mount Rushmores, all of these guys have transcended wrestling, where Seth Rollins is just a wrestler.
Unfortunately, though, Seth Rollins was not the best champion in WWE around this time. It was actually John Cena. For those who don't know, John Cena was doing his open challenge,
overshadowed by a mainstream guy.
With the United States Championship, and he was also delivering banger matches every single week. The man went out there with guys like Stardust, Wade Barrett, Dean Ambrose, Cesaro, and he consistently delivered every single night. And
to be fair, every single one of those names that he mentioned, every name he mentioned, that wasn't fair. Those were really, really good wrestlers.
Matches every single week. The man went out there with guys like Stardust, Wade Barrett, Dean Ambrose, Cesaro, and he consistently delivered every single night. And despite Seth Rollins being technically the man in WWE,
it's not like he's going in there with Xavier Woods and putting on a top tier match. You know, he's not going in there with Otis or Omos. He's not going in there with Omos and putting on a top tier match. That wasn't what was happening.
The top title. Let's be serious. We all know this was the reign of John Cena still. Cena may have had a secondary title, but he made that title the title in WWE. I mean,
so the thing about, all right, Now, this is what I talked about in my other video, but I can expand here because this is a great example, which is what is the point of the title? With John Cena, it was the open challenge, right? So you gave the title a gimmick, which was the open challenge. The challenge became, there's no story here. It's just, are you good enough to beat me? I'm going to call out anybody. You can come out and face me. The title has a gimmick, and then the person holding the gimmick is the obstacle. There's no story behind it, none whatsoever, but it worked because they told you that that is what that was. Now, when you look at the heavyweight championship that Seth Rollins is holding, they want to make it more than the other title. But what makes this more than the other title? Why do we care about it? The wrestlers don't even care about it. I mean, I guess Drew is starting to care about it, but that's about it.
Think about it, the US title hasn't had a lot of highlights over the last 10 to 15 years, but that reign is something that everybody remembers. And that's not to take away from what Seth Rollins was doing with the top title, but unfortunately, maybe it was because he was a heel at the time. Nobody really saw him as...
Damn, this makes me think. I could kind of say the same thing about Gunther. I mean, Gunther's the obstacle with the IC title, but the title is meaningless. I'm gonna think about that. I might do a Goon video.
The man. And you could say, hey, he was young, he was on the rise, but even if you want to have that young on the rise conversation, even back then we knew that Seth Rollins wasn't the chosen one. It was Roman Reigns. So Seth Rollins coming back and being the babyface, with Roman Reigns eventually turning heel, I assumed. Haha, silly me, yeah, I know, but still, I thought that was something they were gonna go in the direction of. It seemed like such an obvious solution. Unfortunately though, they didn't go with that direction, and they decided to keep Seth Rollins as a heel. It was a very puzzling decision. He would come out and get these babyface reactions, but yet he would still come out and shit on the crowd as a heel. It was so weird and lame, and the fact that WWE didn't capitalize off of his immediate momentum as a babyface was the definition of poor execution. I mean, sure, Seth Rollins didn't have to come back and immediately start being happy-go-lucky with the fans, but it's not like we didn't know he was gonna turn babyface anyways, and guess how long it took for him to do so? 4 whole months. 4 whole damn months. And in between that time, he was feuding with some of the top baby faces in the company like Dean Ambrose and Finn Balor. So a lot of that momentum that he had as a top baby face coming in fresh off the injury, it was basically all dissipated. And sure, the fans still liked Seth Rollins when he turned babyface, but once again, it was just a missed opportunity to take advantage of a lot of momentum that he already had. Now, I know Seth Rollins did win back the World Championship at Money in the Bank in 2016, but
Let's think about this. How can we make Seth Rollins an effective babyface? Because oftentimes Seth Rollins will get into these heel roles and he'll do something that'll get himself over, in which the crowd wants to react to him positively. There's always the blueprint that is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold was never a guy that wanted to, well, I'm talking about Stone Cold when he was at the height of his popularity. He wasn't trying to placate to, or kiss the crowd's ass. It was, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You either like it or you don't. He didn't care. The audience just liked it, but he stayed himself. Seth Rollins keeps changing I don't want to say night in and night out, but it seems like he just keeps changing from gimmick to gimmick to gimmick to gimmick to gimmick. It's, who are you, sir? Who are you? You're Seth Rollins, the guy that wrestles, because that's the only thing that seems to be consistent with Seth Rollins, is that he can wrestle. Who he is as a person, we don't know. So that's kind of why babyface doesn't really work out with him for too much of a long time. The only reason why people are still reacting to him now is because of his music. You take away his music, what do you got? Guy that wrestles.
Like I said in the beginning of my video, anytime Seth Rollins becomes the man in WWE or is pushed in that direction, there's usually somebody else that's preoccupying that spot. And this time, it actually wasn't a male superstar. It was his wife, Becky Lynch. Becky was on an incredible run that year and was the most popular star in the company. And if it wasn't for her getting as over as she did, Seth Rollins probably would have had a much better shot at main eventing WrestleMania that year, but he didn't really stand a chance. I mean, Seth Seth won the Royal Rumble and he opened WrestleMania that year. I mean, I understand that Brock Lesnar wanted to go home as soon as possible, but damn, that was sad. But nonetheless, though, Rollins was the main champion on the men's side. And
to be fair, that was extremely understandable because you can have somebody, well, you got Brock Lesnar there. Hell, you could even have The Rock on that WrestleMania. But as hot as Becky was and what they were trying to do at that moment, as far as making the women a lot more important, you kind of got to go with it. That's one of those things where that was the hottest program that they had going at the time. You go with your hot hand. Again, you could have had The Rock there. I'm not putting The Rock in the main event when we have something that is that hot as what Becky was. I want to say around Royal Rumble time, especially around Elimination Chamber time, is when, to me, and no one was saying it, but to me, Becky was definitely cooling off a bit. But people didn't really notice it until months after WrestleMania, where it was like, okay, you take away her getting punched in the face and her being badass, and it's just, you got somebody that feels like they're acting. You know, I felt like that before that but again, she was super hot. Everything with the women was really hot. That was the year you got Ronda. You had the all women's pay-per-view, which did pretty well with good matches. Wrestling for women was hot at that time. You got to go with your hot hand. So, you know, Seth Rollins not getting that spot, even though he's got Brock Lesnar, that one right there was just unfortunate. That was bad luck.
Then to top things off, he had a horrible Hell in a Cell match with The Fiend. I mean, you talk about something that was just a bad idea from the beginning. Oh my God. The feud itself was already kind of lame. You had Seth Rollins literally destroying the Firefly Funhouse. That was whack as fuck. But the match itself didn't help anybody, especially considering that it ended in a disqualification.
So let's take a pause right here. Let's think about this. Seth Rollins got a match with The Fiend, right? And for some reason, people can't seem to get over in a match with The Fiend. Even though Bray himself and The Fiend character and everything that Bray can do, Bray was over. Bray was over, right? You got your build up to the match. All you have to do is not appear as a lame. The entire time, Seth Rollins appeared lame, completely lame. And quite frankly, the only way for this match to have gone, or the way that this match should have gone, should have been Bray completely destroying Seth Rollins. And just, I want to say in a sense of like, Seth Rollins comes back as broken. Not on some broken Matt Hardy mess, but like just mentally somewhere else. Because after this is where people say that Seth Rollins got his mean streak. You could have achieved that with Bray winning this match, and I mean destroying him. You got the all red, you got the cage, you got all of the gadgets in the ring. Bray should have wiped him out. You have Seth go down this dark path in which he has to find himself. If you want him to be over as a babyface, give him an obstacle, and not just an obstacle for a match, but an obstacle that's going to take some time to get over. That's where they messed up with this match.
Hit this guy with 1,000 curb stomps over and over and over again. It was
made Bray look horrible.
Then he hit him with a chair, a ladder, and then once a sledgehammer gets introduced, the referee says, hey, that's too far, I gotta call for the bell. So it's no surprise that the fans are going to hate all over the product when you're the champion, you're the top guy, and you're being booked like this. The fact of the matter is your championship run had some good matches, but the storylines in your character was pretty damn lame. That's why in the latter half of your run, you were getting pretty mixed reactions. Mind you, Rollins was a babyface. He was supposed to lead the company as the face of the brand, and the company was going through all-time lows in viewership and ratings. It's not all Seth Rollins' fault, but you have to put some accountability on not only him as a champion, but him outside the ring as well. As a
champion needs to be able to call their shots. When you got that belt and you're looked at as the top guy, you should have input. Doesn't sound like he really used any input. That's just what it sounds like, because that match and that feud should not have gone that way at all. They dropped the ball there. Across the board, they all dropped the ball.
person. He didn't represent himself or the company very well in the eyes of WWE fans, and it got so bad that as soon as he dropped that title to The Fiend in Saudi Arabia, they instantly had to turn him heel. And to be fair, Rollins did a pretty good job with the heel gimmick that they gave him, being the Monday Night Messiah.
Because he's
some pretty good matches and feuds along the way with guys like Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, and even Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam in the Thunderdome. That match surprised me, not only with how good Seth Rollins looked, but how good Dominic looked as well. Rollins had good matches with Buddy Murphy, and even when they left the Thunderdome, I really enjoyed the trio of matches that he had with Edge. His match with Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble I thought was one of the best matches of Roman Reigns' title run so far, which is no surprise.
I still have to go and watch that match. I've never seen that match. I've been on a bit of a hiatus from wrestling for a while now.
As Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, they always have great matches. Then he went on to feud with Cody Rhodes, and of course we all know they had some great matches.
Another match that I need to watch. I slept during this. It was Cody.
Including the Hell in a Cell match that's widely regarded as one of the best matches of all time. And while he was the champion, he naturally turned into a babyface again. I mean, it had been years since the debacle at Hell in a Cell with The Fiend. So turning Rollins babyface, it just seemed like a natural thing to do at the time, which they did. And
it was because of his music.
as we all know, Rollins continued to have great matches night in and night out, including the amazing match he had at WrestleMania with Logan Paul that I enjoyed, and even followed that up with one of the most shockingly good matches of the year with Omos at Backlash. Rollins had earned the right to get another shot with the top championship in the company, and that's why they put that new World Heavyweight Championship on Seth Rollins.
He deserves it, but it's a mid-card belt.
Unfortunately, though, just like all of his other championship reigns, he is not the top guy in the company. Hell, he's not even the top guy on his brand. If you don't want to include Roman Reigns because he's not on the show all the time, even though
Seth isn't even the top, not even the top two. He's like number 3 on his brand. Goon, you know what? We got to make that Goon video.
Agree, whatever, fine, let's put him to the side. He's not even the top guy on Raw for champions. It's Gunther. Gunther's been delivering every single night he steps onto the mat, and he's been doing it as champion a hell of a lot longer than Seth Rollins has. And hell, even if I remove Gunther, Seth Rollins isn't even the most over babyface in the company. Hell, he's not even the second most over babyface in the company right now. It's actually Jey Uso and LA Knight. Seth Rollins is
all right, now let me be fair. He made this video 4 months ago, so he was right. That's not the case now.
Supposed to be the man on Monday Night Raw as the top champion on that brand. But it really just feels like he's another great wrestler on Raw instead of the great wrestler on Raw. And I think the problem with Seth Rollins goes deeper than just how he's booked. I don't think Seth Rollins is really a great babyface. When he comes out, he says things that are pretty heelish, and he acts pretty heelish with that laugh.
It's a nasty laugh.
And sure, he gets babyface reactions. It's not like I'm saying you should turn him heel, but he's not really going to ingratiate himself compared to other guys who have better stories and just flat out better characters that the audience can relate to. And that's been the...
If you look at this picture tells you all you need to know about why one guy would be more over than the other. You can just look at this one picture. Look at it. You have one guy dressed like Throw Up. Look at his face. It's a big joke to him. The other guy, extremely professional looking, very serious about what it is that he wants to do. Just look at him. Jawline and all of that. He's just dead serious. Now, I don't give a single about Cody, but he looks the part. He looks the part.
Story of Seth Rollins' entire career as the man in WWE. I look at Seth Rollins very similar to guys like Randy Orton.
I'm sorry, wrestling fans, but you all signed up for a cosmetic business. You're fans of a cosmetic business, and that's what this is. Look at Rollins. Does that picture right there scream top of the food chain?
But it never really worked out long term, especially in the case of Triple H, because that reign of terror is just so annoying looking back on it.
It didn't work for Triple H because people just did not like him. And it was like, how can we take him seriously when we got a guy like Stone Cold? Stone Cold goes down. It's like, how can we take him seriously when we got a guy like The Rock? Rock goes to Hollywood. Now it's just Triple H. But then it's like, who else? You know, it's like, it almost felt like, hey, we're just stuck with him. Until we could build these other guys up, Batista, Randy Orton, John Cena, until we could build those guys up, we're stuck with this guy. And in building them up, you kind of built them up in their own bubble, right? Those guys were on SmackDown. Randy Orton was with Triple H, and he always felt like he was under until he had the match with Mankind. You know what? Maybe that's what held him back. Maybe if you put Orton, Cena, and Brock all together on SmackDown, then Randy Orton would have been a bigger deal than he was. Maybe being stuck with Triple H brought him down. I might have to think about that. If you guys have a comment on that subject right there, leave it in the comment section. If it's enough that I could, sink my teeth into, I might make a video out of that. I'm trying to make videos on everything right now. But and then you got Seth, Edge. Yeah, I know how I feel about Canadian wrestlers.
Triple H and Randy Orton, they are definitely the faces of their generation. Not the face, but one of the faces. But they weren't ever really the guy in WWE. They were usually the guy that works with the guy. They worked with guys like John Cena, baby faces that were white hot like a Jeff Hardy, a Daniel Bryan. And because they were so great in the ring or with their character work as heels, they were able to get the best out of those feuds and matches, which is very similar to Seth Rollins. Rollins, in my opinion, will never really be the guy in WWE. And if you've heard interviews from him, he said that it eats him up alive all the time.
Omo Mustard had a fantastic video right there. Really appreciate that he put it out, and I really appreciate that he let me react and respond to this. I would say go on ahead over there if you want to see this video completely uninterrupted and with all the parts, because I cut a lot of it out just for time constraints. I will have his channel and video in the description as well as the comment section. I'll post them in both locations so you guys won't miss it. But definitely go check him out. As you can see from his video content and a delivery, seems like a pretty good watch, and I'll be watching as well. But that's all I got for you guys on this video. Leave a comment down in the comment section. Let me know if there's anybody else that you want me to do a deep dive in on content-wise down in the comment section below. And I will be to you soon. Peace.